Meditators, welcome to another episode of the Market Meditations podcast. Today, I have a guest who doesn't really need an introduction, but we'll do one anyway. Jiho, he is the co-founder and head of growth at Axie Infinity, the world's largest NFT game, pretty much the pioneers for play-to-earn gaming, the first game to go mainstream. As a gamer myself, you guys know I'm super excited about it. We're so bullish on the space, and we've had guests like Bryson on, which people absolutely loved, talking about this incredible game. Jiho, I think right now you guys are generating almost $1 billion in total revenue, to $1 billion in total revenue. It's absolutely mind-blowing. How does it feel to have pioneered this movement and built something so incredible?
Thanks for having me on the show, man. I've been a fan. It feels amazing, but there's also a huge responsibility now on our shoulders to keep pushing to make sure that we really make our most of this opportunity that we've, I think, been blessed to have kind of
You
grown
say
into.
the opportunity you've been blessed with. Did you ever expect it to play out like this when you first started?
I think when you're building a startup, when you're starting a movement, right, you're doing things almost day by day. You're doing experiments and you're seeing what's working. And right, sometimes you will think about the long-term goal. I think we had a very principled approach to building where we were looking to empower our users, give them more freedom to build the game that we always wanted to play as gamers. And everything kind of was just naturally flowing from that. And right, so over time, right, it seemed like, okay, our probability of success is increasing. And that was one of the things that we talked about internally. Is like, yeah, we're probably at like 8% now. And that steadily kind of went up over time. But yeah, it's always amazing to see it actually pan out. And I think it didn't necessarily happen in the ways that anyone could have ever predicted, right? A lot of the things that happened were kind of emergent behaviors from the community, right? Like we didn't predict the rise of the scholarship model. We didn't know that SLP would be such a huge part of play to earn. We thought that it would be, right, like once we turned on access rewards for everyone, that right, the feedback loop would happen. So we kind of thought that it would be a little bit more delayed. So the fact that the SLP economy was activated about a year and a half ago, uh, that was actually working. And yeah, like the scholarship model emerging, and all this amazing content and the streamers, right? It would have been hard for us to predict exactly how things went down. I think a lot of these are emergent behaviors from the freedom that's naturally infused into the platform.
uh, you touched on so many topics which we're going to explore during this episode without a doubt. My first thing will be more of a macro point on what you just said. With so many unknowns, so many unexpected things just appearing and happening as you guys experiment and improve the product, how do you handle there being nothing to replicate off of, nothing to really guide you because you really are pioneering and pushing forward into these unknown territories?
Sure. So people ask about our, I guess, so there are things that we can look at, I think, right? There are amazingly fun games that we grew up playing. Something like, for example, for the crafting system or the upgrades, right? We might look at something like Diablo's Quadratic Cube, right? When it comes to economic design, right? We might look at things like the birth of the financial systems of the Netherlands and England, and even Hamilton's plan for America. So I think, right, like we do have things that we can look at and index on. They're just not necessarily other games, right? Oftentimes we're looking at revolutions that have happened, changes in thought. And also, yeah, there are some systems from games that we can also look at and bring into our universe. But yeah, that's also one of the reasons that I think, having other play to earn games pop up to, I guess, quote unquote, compete with us, I think would actually be good for us, because then we'd get to see more experiments that are happening, and potentially, right, have some awesome features to port over into our ecosystem.
It really is some sort of revolution, and I can definitely see how you can model aspects of different things which already exist and bring it into this new thing. Specifically, when you talk about revolution, I think about the scholarship program and how crazy that's gotten, and the global impact it's happening. This digital economy has been built in which people can live in the real world purely by adding value to this entirely digitally native economy. So what do you think the implications of this are? Like, I could see this helping hugely with stuff like inequality, you know, in a way where it just if someone in a richer part of the world values their time a bit more than a less rich part of the world, where they can sell their time, and there can be some sort of equilibrium there. Like, what do you think the impacts are going to be for economically with this going forward? Will it be as big as it's looking to be, or is this just more of a bubble and explosion phase?
This is an entirely new category of work. The future of work is definitely changing, right? Automation threatens to destroy a lot of the jobs as we know them right now. So we as a society, we need to think about, what does the future of work look like? Is it plausible that many people on this earth will have main sources of incomes or supplementary incomes from playing games? I think the answer is yes. I think that we're already seeing this with Axie. We've already seen Axie put food on the table for hundreds of thousands of families, create hundreds of thousands of jobs in the pandemic. And I think it's just a taste of what's to come. So yeah, I think that it's really important. You know, the things, the experiences, and our possessions in digital worlds are becoming more and more important. So it's natural that there would be real value attributed to these worlds, and that there would be people who are willing to trade their money for time or work done in these virtual worlds.
Do you think so? You mentioned automation being what makes this almost necessity in a way, because once there isn't, you don't need to work for essentials like, say, food and shelter in a more distant future. This becomes almost like the next thing to do. Do you think there's potentially a chance that the pace at which people gravitate towards the digital world outpaces the pace of automation and causes some sort of issue?
I think, yeah, people are streaming into the crypto economy, into these, you know, into games. I think that is a trend that I would never bet against, and I think, yeah, it has the potential to outstrip like what will and what's been happening with automation. I think it's hugely important, and I think that it's a bright spot. I think that, you know, we it's easy for us to see how jobs will be destroyed. It's much easier to be a pessimist than an optimist. But yeah, I think like one of the things that we've always thought about is like, okay, like what does the future of work look like? How can we be involved in that, right? So I think we're competing, and I think we're supplementary to things like Uber, Airbnb, Grab in Southeast Asia, right? Where we're creating an entirely new category of labor.
And as you're creating this new category of labor, I'm sure you guys feel the weight of the amount of people that, like you said, they're supporting their families with this. They're putting food on the table with Axie Infinity. What are you guys doing to ensure the sustainability of this, to make sure that people can continue not only doing this, but expanding the scope at which they can do it? In what ways is Axie positioning itself to survive the next, say, 10, 15 years?
Definitely. Sustainability to us is one of the things that we think about the most. We've been around for 4 years, so I think Axie is becoming incredibly lindy. With each day that we survive, the chances of us pushing on for even longer, I think, increases. I think it's important for us to ensure that we continue to make the product more fun, easier to use, more accessible, and then it continues to be an amazing gateway for people into crypto. Something that's right? We want Axie to be nostalgic and fun and accessible in a space where that's pretty rare, right? Most people, find crypto to be a little bit confusing, maybe stressful, more about like money and like, I guess financially and in trading. Whereas we really want to stress the right, like the fun aspect, the status aspect, um, the community aspect first and foremost. If we focus on that, then the other benefits flow naturally. Um, so yeah, it is really important for us to continue to improve the product. I think that there are also certain features that make it much easier to balance the economy in the long run. For example, upgrading Axie body parts using crafting materials, basically having a system where you can release, let's say, release your Axies, get some crafting ingredients and materials that you then use to upgrade your other Axies. Right, so basically ways for people to become more better bonded, right? To spend resources, spend energy on upgrading their Axies. This creates more sync, I guess a sync for the natural resources or the in-game resources within the economy. So I think features like that are really important as well as features that build deep liquidity for our in-game resources. So we're currently working on a decentralized exchange, the Ronin Dex, which that is one of the main goals of that project.
I'm going to circle back to the Ronin Dex in a second and how that works specifically because I'm somewhat familiar, but I think our users would find it very interesting, especially those who know how expensive it can be to use Ethereum in general. What games do you look up for that have accomplished what you guys are trying to accomplish in terms of being able to remain interesting and engaging and fun for a really long period of time?
Sure. I think there are a number of like very community-based games with very complex economies that have stayed alive for a long time. RuneScape, EVE Online, Diablo 2. Um, these are some of the things that we can look at for past examples that have had right really long shelf lives, and I think right the combination of a strong community and a very interesting economy, these are two of the ingredients that create really long lasting communities and economies. We're just supercharging that, right, where we're building the game to really facilitate the community and the economy. Uh, and making it much easier and much more explicit, the way that people can turn their time and effort into real value.
I know people can somewhat do that, like because you mentioned RuneScape. I know there's a gold system in RuneScape that you can trade for real money. What's the advantage of doing so with Axie over a game like RuneScape?
So Axie was built right to make all the real money, real value systems like very basically like we built Axie with those systems in mind from the start, right? Um, and we've also built Axie so that it can actually be owned by the community that plays it, right? So we have the Axis token, which represents a piece of the Axie universe, and right, so all kind of revenue and fees within the universe are put into a treasury that is actually owned by the holders of this token. So we're taking it to another level where right this entire ecosystem has been designed with these ideals and principles of co-ownership in mind. Yeah, in Axie, right, like also the in-game resources are tokenized. That means that they can be right, like there's liquidity for them on crypto exchanges, so it's just much easier. And whenever you remove friction, that creates right like a much larger market as well. So I used to try and sell my stuff in Diablo 2 and for real money, and it was just so hard, and you could get banned. It was very risky. So it was we're more of like a black market or a gray market, whereas this is right front and center when we're building the game, and it's built right kind of directly into the web application, which we're hosting. So.
And the Ronin decks you mentioned earlier, that's a means of removing friction for players. Could you explain what that is a little bit, please?
Sure. So the Ronin Dex is an exchange which has been built to allow for frictionless swapping of our in-game resources for other cryptocurrencies such as Ether. So yeah, right now, if someone wants to breed an Axie, they'll have to buy Axis tokens, buy Smooth Love potions on an exchange, right? Like Binance or Coinbase or Uniswap, right? These are places that are kind of far away from our game economy, and then they have to send these resources over a bridge into Ronin, which is our Ethereum sidechain. This is really, it takes time, it takes a lot of clicks, it's very costly. So it makes it harder to breed. It makes it harder to do things within the economy. So the idea is to build this DEX to make it the place with most liquidity for all the tokens within our ecosystem, and to have it directly on Ronin, where the majority of economic or all the economic activity within our ecosystem is happening. So this will this we think this is going to be a game changer. We think it's going to just like when we released Ronin, it just kind of greased the wheels of our economy. We think that this is also a similar event.
Are there other unsolved frictions you guys see right now that you're looking to solve in the future?
Yeah, there are so many. It's still incredibly hard to get started with Axie. The reason that we've been able to grow is that our amazing community has been really taken it upon themselves to onboard by hand their friends and family. 80% of our new users are from referrals. So we, yeah. So we see a lot of friction that we're looking to do away with. I mean, one of them is that right now it's very difficult to get started with Axie, where you're forced to basically buy Axies very early on in your education process without even really knowing how to play the game, right? So some people will find out about Axie, they'll do all the steps to get cryptocurrency. Uh, they can actually buy it on Ronin right now as well, which is one of the steps that we've taken to make things faster. But right, so if someone wants to get started, they'll have to do all this research and try and learn the game without actually playing it, right? So we have an upgraded battle system that's coming where people will get 3 free starter Axies so that they can learn the game, learn the mechanics, see if they love it before they have to make any economic decisions, right? So we think that that's going to be a much smoother introduction. Yeah, I think so I think that's going to be huge, right? To basically just allow people to get their feet wet without any economic and kind of input initially. So that's going to be huge. Yeah, we make it so that you can buy ETH with credit card and debit card through directly on our platform. That's made it a lot easier. But I think in the future, what I'm really excited about is potentially having a system where you can actually just do a peer-to-peer transaction on our marketplace to buy an Axie from someone else using your credit or debit card. It's a little bit more difficult technically and logistically because of the chargeback issues, but I think that I see people working on that, and I think it's going to get solved. So.
Yeah, those are huge changes, especially the free Axies. Is there any way someone could play with the free Axies and earn AXS with that or SLP?
Yeah, so we need to be really careful because that could also be right allowing anything that with a super low barrier to be able to earn could be something that, for example, bad actors use like bots. So yeah, I think the idea would be just for people to get an understanding of the game and how to play and whether they like it, and before they might apply for a scholarship or buy their own Axies. So.
As the crypto industry continues to mature, it's natural that more and more wealth building platforms will arise. The problem with many of these, however, is that they are often so complex that it disincentivizes people from using them. This is why I've partnered with Nexo, one of the top crypto lending platforms in the world. With over 1.5 million users and 15 billion assets under management, Nexo combines the yield earning features of crypto with the familiarity and ease of centralized finance. Nexo allows you to earn interest at a competitive rate on crypto and fiat. They also allow you to take out loans using crypto as collateral so that you have access to cash without needing to sell your investment. You can even trade directly on the web platform and mobile app in an intuitive and secure way. If you're looking to embark on the journey to financial freedom whilst minimizing time and frustration, I highly recommend you check them out by visiting nexo.io. That's nexo.io. This whole Axie journey, it's not only been one for the NFT space for you, but it's also been an entrepreneurial journey, just building this huge company. What have you learned from this experience? What are the top lessons you share with builders listening to this episode right now?
So a lot of people, right? So I'm on the community and economy side of things, right? So I think maybe the community aspect is something that might be the most universal. And I think for us, right, it really was doing super unscalable things in the beginning to build a strong community. Where right we were in the Discord chatting with our community members, getting to know them, in many cases becoming very quite close with them, and at that time it's like it might seem like, oh, like this seems right, like maybe it's a waste of, not waste, maybe it's not the best use of my time, because shouldn't I be out there talking to the world, like shouldn't I be doing things that can get us hundreds of users, thousands of users at a time, rather than right like talking to this small kind of niche community in Discord, for example. But what I'll say is, I mean, depending on your product, but definitely for anything where community is super important, doing that stuff will pay off hugely in the long run. Um, so yeah, get to know your users, right? Become friends with them, talk to them, get to know like what they're thinking, uh, and yeah, like I think that's super important. I think that's been a part of the journey. Involve them, right? Like give them things that they can do, ask them for favors, and just involve them in the creation process. Where I think that's been really important. I think yeah, I think just being relentless. I think like with there was no such thing. I think in like a lot of people I think are afraid of being too early. We were afraid of being too early, but we realized that if we just didn't give up and just stuck through it and just stuck around, then our moment would come. So I think that could be an antidote to being too early, is just to be relentless and never give up. I think like some people think that they're too early and then they give up. They're like, okay, we were too early, and then they stop building, and then it blows up a year and a half later. It's like, well, if you just found a way to survive for a year and a half, maybe that could have been you.
I think that's fantastic advice. Really focuses on the quality of your audience and helps you tailor the product for your audience while building that loyalty, that interaction with your community. So that's what you guys did incredibly well. Now, if you had a time machine and you were to go back to the start, what would you have done differently? What was one of the biggest mistakes you think you made in the early days of Axie?
Those were really magical times, and I'm it's changing anything, might have mixed things up. I think we in the early days we set we set target. We basically announced when we would release things, and oftentimes because it was new technology, we had to delay. So now, like I would say, like think in terms of pipeline rather than I would say have internal deadlines and internal dates, but be very careful about how you communicate them to the world. So our kind of launch strategy these days is just uh, release things when they're ready, and then you have this kind of surprise and hype effect, I think. So I think a lot of people, they think that, oh, like, we need, in order for people to know and to use our product, they have to know that there's going to be a launch coming, you know, like 10 days from the time that it comes. But I think that's like a super overrated, kind of outdated way of launching things.
It absolutely is, and you are not the first founder to say that on this podcast. To make sure you don't say specific dates of when you're going to do stuff, but let people know it's coming. Because especially in anything where development is involved, delays are just a part of the process. They're almost to be expected. So, a question I think you may have been asked before as well. The thought of traditional AAA gaming studios with huge teams and tons of experience coming in and trying to build a competition to, say, Axie's play to earn model. Have you guys thought about that? Is that something you plan for or are expecting?
It's something that we're excited about, and I think that it's happening. I think that they are going to have to teach them, unlearn a lot of things, and whenever you're in a situation where people have to unlearn things, you know, I tend to just bet on the people who are creating the principles, if that makes sense, right? This is maybe similar to, not to compare ourselves to Tesla, but like, you know, some more, right? Like Tesla had never made a car before, right? But they also didn't have any things that they had to unlearn. So yeah, I think there's a lot of, you know, there's going to be a lot of scar tissue that they'll need to accumulate before they really understand exactly what to do. Maybe they can look to us for some guidance and examples, and, you know, we're happy to, work with them. That's one of the reasons that we have Ronin as well, is not just for Axie, but long term, right? To be a scaling solution for the entire industry. We just saw that Steam is banning all NFT powered games from from their platform. Well, that's a huge opportunity for us, where we actually have the Mavis Hub, which we see as the Steam for NFT powered games. So I think it's our opportunity. But yeah, I think that these AAA, I don't know, like AAA is a loaded term, but these large game studios, I think they're still in the early stages. I think that they're interested. I think that the most important trend might be the flow of talent. So a lot of a lot of amazing game designers and people from these studios, they might not want to wait for their employer to, right, like get fully up to speed, and, you know, they might want to work at 𝐏𝐸 or one of the teams that's actually building right now. So
We're seeing that happening in just regular crypto sector as it is. People from traditional finance, they're not willing to wait for the regulations to come in place so the company's comfortable to properly move there, or the departments to get formed. They're just moving straight over because this is exciting. It's fast paced. There's a lot less, the less centralization means it's much more lucrative for them to be in this industry than their more centralized industry, which everything gets funneled to the top of. So that's a really, really great answer. And I love the Steam example as well, because that's just a real life example of that scar tissue being there too much for them to be ready for NFT games to enter. So I mean, I know, moving a little bit away from Axie Infinity itself, you're also involved in Metacartel Ventures, and which I want to talk about. And before I dive in, could you explain for our listeners what a DAO is?
okay, yeah. So a DAO is a new form of organization that is in many ways co-owned and sometimes co-managed by a group of individuals. It's kind of like a very high-tech co-op, if that makes sense, where yeah, you have a bunch of people, usually on the internet, working together to do different things. Yeah, I think DAOs can be very broad and can be interpreted very loosely, but oftentimes they use tokens to organize themselves. So everyone in the DAO might have ownership of some token. That token might be useful for signaling or voting, or it might represent kind of ownership within the organization.
I think that needs nothing added to it. Thank you for the explanation. And now, what is the purpose of Metacartel Ventures?
Yeah, so Metacartel was found. I started in the bear market, and that's when I started talking to people like Peter Pan, and I was interested because they seemed like they were interested in and pushing consumer applications. Back then it was like a very small group of people, I guess, that were actually interested in building things that could be popular with real people, everyday people. And so I met them, and yeah, Metacartel Ventures I think started uh, yeah, also like kind of, in the depths of the bear market with the goal of investing in the next generation of applications, in many cases powered by Ethereum that would, get into the hands of everyday people. That's what interested me, was always this like consumer tilt. And then also, yeah, just the amazing network. A lot of people that I really looked up to and had built amazing things were part of Metacartel Ventures, and it gave me a way to get closer to them. It's also been a way to educate people on DAOs. I think like people have joined Metacartel and Metacartel Ventures, learned more about DAOs, and then started other DAOs, right? So DAOs are just, I think, inherently viral because when someone learns and is a part of one, they often will end up spinning up more.
Really is an interesting thing about DAOs and NFTs in general. They have that in common, where as soon as you use them, you get looped into it and you start getting almost addicted and hooked on them. I remember, I think we had, I'm sure you're familiar with DCL blogger who we had on the other day, and he was talking about that effect when you first buy an NFT and you own it and you truly understand what it's like to own it, and then you get it more than words can explain. DAOs have a very similar feeling of when you get involved in one and you truly understand what it is and how it works and how it really could be the future. Well, thanks for that brief DAO interlude, Jiho. The last place I want to jump into for this podcast and talk about is going to be what else in the NFT gaming space. I know you guys said you welcome competition, you're excited, you want more games to enter because it isn't even competition. The pie is growing at such a rapid rate that it's mutually beneficial for more games to enter this space. Are there any you're really excited for right now that are coming out?
Yeah, it's a good question. I have invested in Nine Chronicles and Aurori. So I think obviously that's one indication of what I'm excited about. I think I'm most also excited about guilds like YGG, Merit Circle. There are a couple of others that are up and coming as well, and that are getting more people involved in the space. People who are competitive gamers, content creators as well. I think like that's also like the guilds are starting to have their own almost talent agencies, and I think that's like a super exciting trend that I'm interested in. So yeah, I think that I'm very bullish on social coordination because right, first we needed to learn how to and figure out how to move money and value around the world, and then it was like, okay, how do we retain people's attention and create like entertainment value, which is like NFTs, and we're starting to figure that out. And now it's like, okay, now that we have a lot of people involved, this movement is growing. How do we scale communication, coordination? How do we reward people scientifically based on the things that they're doing? So I think that that's the next wave, and I think that games that are really in tune with that are going to be the next wave of winners.
That's such a clear, refined way of looking at it. First, figure out how to transfer value, then attention, and now that you have that, you can create more complex, coordinated systems. It's a really beautiful way to look at it.
Right, and this, I think that those buckets really align well with DeFi, NFTs, DAOs. It's like money, power, respect.
So what are the role of guilds in all of this? You said you're excited about them. How are they necessary? When you say guilds, is that linked to the scholarship programs? Because I know a lot of guilds run them, or do you view them as separate entities to just the scholarship programs?
One of the core I guess mechanics, or I guess priorities of so far of the guilds has been to, right, make these scholarships. Scholarships are a system where people are lending out NFTs, often, right? Well, let's just say with an Axie, I think that's the only place that it's really been a scalable model. So in an Axie economy, Axies are quite expensive because you can use them to earn real value, but the people who need them cannot afford, right, for a $450 Axie team. So this is kind of a paradox, right? Okay, Axies can be used to create real value, but because of this, they're expensive and inaccessible to the people who would actually love to be able to use them to unlock that value. So then that's where the scholarships come in, where they are acquiring Axies and then lending them out to people who can't afford them, and signing some sort of token sharing agreement where the scholar might be getting a portion, let's say, 60 to 70% of the tokens that they earn while using an Axie account. So yeah, scholarship programs have turned into guilds in many cases. Um, so that is one of the core priorities of the scholarship of the guild so far. But I think that they're also, going into content creation, esports. Um, I think that they'll expand into different verticals over time.
The possibilities are endless. Like you build the sustainable business, and then they can evolve the brand and what they do in as many ways as they want. Jiho, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you hopping on. This has been an episode I've wanted to do for a while. I really do respect you and the Axie team so much, and I'm grateful for what you guys have done and are doing for the space. I hope your life has changed for the better from this journey and will continue to take you on incredible paths. Is there anything you'd like to leave our listeners with before we close out this episode, even if it's just you hopefully had a good time, and goodbye to them?
Well, yeah, no, thanks so much for having me. As I said when I think I reached out, you have been really important to the success of Axie Infinity, because you've gotten some amazing community members like Bryson to take a look at our product. So what I'll say to the listeners is that, if you're interested in learning more about this movement, this technology, this new way of building games, definitely just, I would say, try to get your feet wet. Try to join a community that you find interesting. Obviously, the Axie community might be one of them. We have an amazing Discord server. It's just discord.gg/Axie. It might be full, but you might be able to get in. And yeah, so just get your feet wet. I think you have to learn by doing in this space. But yeah, obviously you're doing well if you're listening to this as well. So yeah, and I guess that's where I'll leave things. Things never really made sense to me until, I actually started. I bred a CryptoKitty for the first time and sold a CryptoKitty for the first time. These were the moments where, right, like, I understood the future. So please seek those for yourself.
Whether it's DeFi, Bitcoin, NFTs, or anything, the best way to learn is to jump in and start using it, as Jiho has so elegantly let us know. After all this talk about Axie Infinity on the podcast, we finally got the legend himself on. I know I'm crazy grateful. I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode as well. That's going to be everything from us. Tune in next time, meditators. Bye.